Hey everyone, it's Shawn. Welcome to another edition of the Journey to CEO show. Today we're going to be dealing with an important topic, a very timely topic. We're going to be talking about business after COVID-19. So if you're watching this, you're probably a business owner, maybe in a business position, maybe leading a team for a business. You might be an advocate that's looking to business for principles on how to organize your nonprofit or social goals. In any case, we are going to bring you a lot of principles and ideas about how to organize business here in 2020. You may feel very disrupted. The world has changed so much, and you can feel very unsettled. But we're going to give you some ideas, some principles, some things to bring forward. A lot of timeless things applied in new ways here for 2020. And I'm going to bring up on the screen Dr. Ann Gatty here. We've written a book called Entrepreneur CEO, which is really in the final editing stages right now. COVID-19 came and we kind of focused on the here and now. We've been working with our clients on working through their business plans for 2020 and then also updating. And what we're going to do actually is we're going to put another book in front of Entrepreneur CEO, which is going to be a shorter guide. And it's going to deal with planning and uncertainty because that's what so many people are doing. But today, we wanted to join you live here and on our Journey to CEO YouTube channel. So you watch it live or record it, share with your friends, and talk about really the principles of what to do in a post-COVID environment. And, you know, I know we still have COVID out there. I know we're still dealing with it, but the initial shocks are over. We can still anticipate some disruption. So that's our idea for tonight, is to really talk about business in this COVID environment and what you need to be doing. Dr. Ann, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, it's good to be here. How you doing, Shawn?
I'm doing great, this is just such an important topic. I was excited when we picked it because you know, that's just what I hear over and over again is, you know, I talk to business owners, a lot of business owners come to me, and there's just so much different this year. And I think, you know, it can be confusing. And you and I think just because the nature of our practices, what we've done over the years, we kind of get to take that 30,000 foot view because we work with so many different clients. And that's just our job. So we kind of have a little different view of the marketplace and kind of can look at it from a global perspective. But so many business owners and those watching probably are in this situation. Feel free to comment if you feel like you're in this situation. You know, it just feels like everything just got changed and the rules were completely rewritten and you're probably still in a state of confusion. At least that's what we're hearing from most of our clients.
Well, yeah, I want to just say that our book that we're looking to produce, which is really more of a pocket primer kind of thing, just to give quick and easy ways in which businesses can start to get their feet under them again, is really taking an objective look of where we are and just realizing that in the first chapter is entitled Reality Has Shifted. You know, we're just saying It's not the same. We're not going back to the same. People may continue to work remotely. Facebook has said, for example, Amazon has said, for example, those two industry leaders have said that they're going to continue to have their workers working remotely. So a lot of change has happened as far as how we do work. Yep. And that's just one example is the remote worker. But we also talk, the other thing that I just want to mention, Shawn, and then jump in is that the second chapter we have is called It's Not Fair, where we talk about the fact that how come it happened to me kind of a thing. And we look at each other. It's like some businesses really could take off. Others were shut down and have barely been able to get back on their feet as well. So you know, if you are comparing yourself all the time to other people, it's really going to be a downer. So we're just saying, hey, you know, you got to look at where reality is, where you are, and we want to give you some tools to build from there.
Right. That's kind of my view. You know, I mean, it's kind of like playing poker, right? I mean, you just got dealt a new set of cards and probably most people in 2020, particularly people watching this show, got dealt a set of cards they weren't expecting to see, you know, and unfortunately, you know, other industries, big businesses, you know, depending on where you are, some people got dealt a really nice hand of cards, right? I mean, you take the Walmarts and the Amazons of the world, everybody around them shut down, they kept rolling and they turned in record profits, right? Most of our most of our business owners that we deal with aren't in that situation. They really had to make real shifts. And we anticipate those of you watching, probably more of you than not, are in that situation where 2020 was a downer. And, you got to step away from the fact that, you may have been in the wrong industry at the wrong time. That's just the way the cards were dealt. We take what we have and we move forward. And that's really what we've kind of done, is say, okay, here we are. This is the reality, and let's move forward. And I think that's an important attitude to have in this situation, rather than saying it's not fair or it shouldn't have happened. Yes, I mean, it would be great if we hadn't had a virus roll through, but we did. And some of the big players capitalized on it. They did. Now we can either walk away and write off years of hard work and the opportunity that comes with rebuilding the business, or we can jump in and do it and use a lot of lessons from the past in new ways and capitalize on this.
Yeah. And what we also then talk about is doing nothing is not an option. Just
Right.
waiting and waiting to see is not really an option. You're just going to fall behind because other people are moving forward. So what we want to just remind business owners is the wait and see attitude is not going to be a solution for you. And that you are going to have to put your toes back in the water and try and see some things that are working. And what we like to do is suggest some incremental changes you can make and test as you're going along, because in a sense, you're building the road as you're walking on it. And that's just where we are right now for many businesses. Again, some businesses were dealt a really great hand, as you talk about poker, but others are struggling, and they're still struggling. And the thing that always throws a monkey wrench in is what's government doing and what regulations are they doing and how is it shifting? And when you don't even know from day to day whether you're open or closed, it makes it very difficult.
Yeah, and it's no fault, right? It's not your fault if you were in the wrong industry. I mean, nobody had any visibility into this, so there's no blame, there's no fault, there's nothing to be ashamed of. You just take how it is and you start moving forward. That being said, we are on that path forward. We got to make the best of it, and it's a little bit different path forward than a normal year because we don't have the visibility, right? I mean, that's something we talk about, Dr. Ann, is we talk a lot about planning and preparing, and there's still a great place for that, but it's a different view of planning and preparing this year versus a normal year because the environment is less stable than usual.
Well, and also you need to take advantage of emerging needs. And all of a sudden you have clientele that maybe you thought needed this particular service, for example, business planning, and now we're in more of a crisis mode where you're doing different kinds of planning. And so you're looking at maybe some of the things you've had in your business, you literally have to dismantle, take apart, and put together in a different way because your workers are handling things differently. So I do think that it becomes important to do a total assessment of your business. And you want to not just, if you're waiting, you're just trying to survive, saying, oh, this will pass, I'll be okay. But if you've put all these years in building this business, then you need to say, okay, here's how the market is shifting, but it's stabilizing in these areas, or this whole area is going away. Here's where we're going to move, and this is how we're going to redo things.
Well, and I'll say every one of my clients, in some way, shape, or form, we've reevaluated their business plan. Some of them did more formal, some did less formal, but everybody's business plan was updated this year in light of COVID-19, and that just became the reality, right? A lot of people don't do that type of update mid-year. It just became necessary, so we did it. And that's kind of where we all are, right? We're going to have to reassess, and then sitting now, and we're getting new information. There's been a lot of information come out here, particularly in the third quarter, start of the fourth quarter. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, we've started to get a lot of understanding of the market. A lot of the local mandates are starting to take shape, and we started to know what they are now. We know what they might be in the longer term. We're getting a lot of certainty out of the government on stimulus or lack thereof. So some things are starting to crystallize a little bit. So it's a good chance to, I'll say, what do I know? What can I say I can plan on? what don't I know, and then start working through the future, right? And we talk a lot about what if planning, and that's going to be a big piece of it. I know there's a lot of that in our upcoming book of, running multiple what if scenarios, because that's just the reality of the market we're in.
Right. I do think that the scenarios have to be developed. You're really going to have to flesh things out as far as optimal situation, and then maybe, okay, the coronavirus comes back again, or something else disrupts again. So all of a sudden we're having issues we didn't expect. But that's why I think it's important that we consider a couple of things. First of all, I do think that people are going to be shopping more local. Mm-hmm. And they are, they're online a lot. So Amazon is making a killing. But also the local shops, and working your networking, and whether or not you have strategic partners or whether you have supply chains that you do, your manufacturing, stay where it's stable and local, so that you can start to build out that kind of security for yourself. And the other thing is, and this is something that I've always believed in, but not everyone has taken the time to do this. You really do need to take the time and do quarterly reviews and do after action reviews, because right now you cannot plan out 5 years. I do not have one client that I'm saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do you a 5-year plan. Right now we're getting through 2020, putting it to bed, and then building out 2021 quarter by quarter, so that as you say, I want to accomplish this by the end of 2021, I want this kind of revenue levels. Then after quarter one, what have you got? How far have you gotten? What do you have to change? Because if you don't, your trajectory, and you say, I'm going over to this particular point, if by the end of the first quarter you're starting to go off, if you don't correct that, you're going to be way off by the end of the year.
Right. And that's why you got to run multiple scenarios, and as we're talking about that, not planning it, but I've got a couple of my clients that are in situations where they need to evaluate their real estate needs, right? So they got leases expiring. They've expanded beyond the capacity of their building. Their business has shifted. Now they want to move to a slightly different location, different part of town or whatever. I mean, these types of decisions still have to be made. But what you and I've been doing, and what we talk about in the upcoming book, is running multiple scenarios so that you know what your exposure is, right? So you may have to sign that 5-year lease. You may have to go sign the mortgage to buy the next building. But if you run multiple scenarios of what the future might be, you can at least know what your risk points are with doing a transaction like that.
Right. And I think that we need to expand who our stakeholders are, and realize that our stakeholders include not only if we have investors or we have a board of stockholders, but also our employees and the clientele that we have. Those are all stakeholders, as well as just, being sustainable and being a good neighbor with your community and such. Those are all stakeholders. And I think that if you take that approach of looking out for all of those individual categories, you're going to find that you're going to end up being more profitable, because more people are going to support you.
Yes, and you alluded to it earlier, is that there is a shift. We talk about it in the book, and we're kind of we keep mentioning things because we go deeper in these in our upcoming book. And so make sure you're subscribed to our Journey to CEO YouTube channel, and you're following me and Dr. Ann, because you'll see more of it when the actual book comes out. But we kind of want to plant the seeds here and give you value on the show as much as we can in this live format. But so you've got these multiple stakeholders. We've talked about kind of diversifying the supply chain, understanding the risk points in your supply chain, potentially localizing your supply chain, working with more people in your region. Another thing, and I did a show on this yesterday, nationalism, and it's a trend that I've been tracking for a while here on my work. That there is this trend to focus within your country. And this is going to be important in your business planning too, because some businesses, make their money off trading internationally, right? They import goods at a lower price. Right. They use offshore labor, and both presidential candidates have indicated that they want to do more in the U.S. We can expect that they're going to have policies that are going to favor that. But then also, your customers may be asking more questions than in the past, right? That would occasionally come up, but I can expect that to be a greater focus going forward is, where is this produced? Who's involved in the production? Are we keeping the money within our borders? Because especially as the job numbers start to change and we come out of the recovery period from COVID-19. So it's definitely something to be planning about, is this growing nationalism trend.
Well, that's interesting that we do have that trend, national trend, as far as keeping things within our borders. But if you think about being a business owner, and if you can have your workers working remotely, then when you're hiring, and you're in Seattle, you're Amazon, you're in Seattle, do you need to pay a salary for that high, the higher living standards and cost of living? Or can you pay a lower salary for someone who's living in an area where the cost of living is much lower?
Yeah.
Or can you also hire someone who maybe is out of the country? So all of a sudden your talent pool just exploded.
Yes. Well, yes. And a lot of people have been working with that. And I think 2020 has driven home the idea that more and more people can work remotely. And we're seeing that. I think the real X factor is we're going to have to balance this, right? So your calculations, and your planning scenarios got a little more complex this year, because you've got to balance the remote working, the technology, the lower cost potentially of international labor versus, perhaps government policies that are going to favor domestic production. I can see that happening at the federal and the state level, versus, do your customers care, right? Are your customers asking this question? Are they saying, are you supporting our local economy? These are the types of things that are going to be very complex, and they're things I'm encouraging people to get them on their planning horizon now and start having
and start asking your clientele, talk to your customers, really get to know them and see how their needs or their perspectives have changed. I mean, this is a time to really have some conversations. I do know that a lot of my coaching colleagues have found that their VAs or virtual assistants are coming from abroad. So, it just depends on the needs that you have, but it also depends on what your clients are willing to buy and what they're willing to support.
Right.
And that becomes probably one of the most critical questions.
Yeah. And I want to double back on that point. And we did this in an earlier video on our Future Done Right, on our Journey to CEO show here. You can go check it out, Journey to CEO YouTube channel. But we said one of the things you should do in order to get through this period is to double down on the conversations with your clients, right? So if you're trying to figure out how do I make the next money, particularly if you're in a tight cash flow situation, pick up the phone, talk to your clients, ask them what they need. Really, it's not a complex strategy, right? And you may find that the talents, abilities, real estate, assets that you have can be redeployed in a slightly different way. And it starts by just picking up the phone and saying, hey, Cal, can I help you?
Well, I think it does. This is a time to assess and really have somebody, if not you personally, someone on your staff contacting all your clients and just talking to them. I mean, I know we've done that here with our business. We've gone through and talked to them and just said, hey, what's going on? How have things changed? How can we help? Is there something we can do for you that would make your life easier? So we've done that. And the other thing we haven't really talked about, Shawn, is get with your CPA or your financial advisor and really look at your assets and see, are you leveraging your assets as well as you should at this time?
Yeah, I think it's a great season for that, of just going through and assessing, right? I mean, we talked about that at one point about making money is what are your assets? What can you use in this? And then the flip side of that is if there's assets that you're not using, how can you redeploy them? Can you offer a new product and service? Can you get some of your employees doing something different? Can you figure out a new way to structure your business? This is a great time to look at that. I remember somebody, Todd Saylor, who's been on a show a couple of times. He had the PPP money come in, and the idea of the PPP money was to keep employees employed. And one of his businesses, he had employees that he didn't necessarily have work on the core function. So he had them painting the building and prepping it and kind of making it nicer for the future, right? So, how can you capitalize on the opportunities that you have in different ways?
I have one client that has a building. It's worth $1 million or so, and it's pretty well, they've got most of it paid for, but having a cash flow situation, they refinanced that so that they opened up some cash and got some extra cash out of it that they could then move forward and keep everybody employed and didn't have to lay anybody off, and they were able to do a lot of community work. So, as you're saying, it's just looking at what you have and make sure you're deploying it appropriately or to your best interest.
Yeah, and you're going to have that with buildings, with equipment, and with people, right? I mean, look at all your categories of assets, and also look at your liabilities too, as you said, right? I mean, can you refinance? Can you get a lower rate on a loan? Could you bring in equity, right? I mean, there may be people out there looking to buy in. So could you trade equity for debt, maybe, in different situations, bring in a partner, have them put a capital infusion, pay off some of your debt, shore up your balance sheet. I mean, there's a lot of different options here. This is a time for kind of out of the box creative thinking and to reinvent businesses. And I think that's a big piece of it. People need to take the time to consider all the possibilities, not just say, this is what we've always done. How do we do it? And how do we tweak it? Now, what can we do to really fundamentally revisit our business and make it successful for this new market that we're moving into?
Well, and if you are an entrepreneur, you've done this, you've already thought of these, you've gone through this beginning experience. So this is a great time. You already know that approach, and this is a great time to reinvent.
Yeah. And we talk about this in Entrepreneur CEO, our larger work. We talk about the stages in entrepreneurship. Well, for a lot of people, I think this kind of shifts you back a little bit. You just step back, and it kind of puts you on an earlier stage of entrepreneurship. You may have been building stability. You may have had your business perfected. You may have had systems and processes in place. And this may just be the chance to shake things up and say, okay, we're going this direction, but we found out the market opportunities that direction. We're going to have to redeploy our assets from there to there, and we're going to turn out great. But we've got to use late 2020, early 2021 as a pivot period to redirect us, because the market just changed, and that's just the reality. The way we were pointing is not the way the market's pointing. Yeah,
and if you can stay agile, then I think you're more likely to succeed too. And that's just a good thing, because if you do it now, you get in that habit. If something disrupts again, which it will, you have the experience and the know-how to not only survive, but take advantage of the shifting new opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that is a period we're going into, right? We've talked about that a little bit, you and I, about the shifting and about the concept that the market is moving. But I think we're going to have a series of that now, right? Because we had a big shift. Now society is shifting. People's views are shifting. The business landscape shifting. We're going to have some fallout still from COVID-19. There's going to be some bankruptcies. There's going to be other people that are failing. We're going to have a period of shifting. So that agility that you're talking about is critical. Build that in there, but also get your team working to spot opportunities so that you can't do it all yourself.
Well, yeah. And I do think that we're in a really volatile society right now in general. So I think that the needs and their perspectives are shifting at a very dramatic rate. Yeah,
it is. I mean, and I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons right now, is just bring that home to your management team and say, hey, that's just the reality, right? Is we were in a fairly stable economic system for a while after we got through the crash of 08, 09, and we kind of started getting the footing back. We had a nice decade period where things were kind of moving upwards and stability and kind of staying on a constant track. Now we're not, and we're in a different period. So we got to just shift our thinking. We got to break ourselves out of the past and say, that's not where we were. We're in a new direction now.
Yeah, I think we sort of, after 2008, I think we got used to, unemployment was still high, but it was sort of static for a while. And so we could just build with a constant that we
Yeah,
sort of knew
it
how.
just kept getting a little better. It kept getting a little better, right? It was a long trajectory, right? And so
Yeah, but right now it's all unpredictable. So
right.
you have to, and I think you're right. About the what ifs, and I like to have people look at 3 different scenarios. Just taking in your particular area, what's the economy going to be looking like? What about the disruption from COVID or the fallout there, and the election coming up? All of those. So you got politics, you got economy, you got society in general. How are
Right.
those things all shifting? And just make some, just for like the first half of next year, where do you think we can get to
Yep.
in those 3 areas? And then as you're going along, check and see. And we won't know. Things could be very different in December of this year.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, we certainly have an election coming up. We will either have certainty or uncertainty from the election. A lot of us are suspecting we may have a further period of uncertainty as the election results start to come in. But in any event, at some point, we're gonna know that, and then like you say, we almost have to build a multi-pivot point chart, right? Like, so what if the economy goes up? What if the economy goes down? What if we get more regulations? What if we get less regulations? And you almost have to pinpoint all of this. And you and I have talked about the concept of kind of figuring out, once you run a multiple scenarios, figuring out what the common denominators are, right? Regardless of whether things go good or bad, whether this or that, what do I need to do? Do I need a bigger warehouse? Do I need to go into a new market? There's going to be some commonality after you look at the whole big picture.
Yeah, and I do think, cash is king, and the thing that, regardless, we have to protect cash flow. And so that's why it becomes more important that you're looking at your balance sheets and you're looking at your P&L statements and you're watching your checking accounts and such. You just got to stay on that and make certain that you've got enough revenue coming in that you can survive as you're then making these predictions and building. You have that foundation.
We've talked about that too on the show, and I want to encourage people to go back and watch our longer episode on it. But we've said, if you're in that situation where cash is in a dire situation, and we know you're out there. We've worked with the clients like you, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, again, because the way the market shifted. But if you're in that situation where cash is very short and you're kind of fighting through it, you put the pride to the side and you figure out what's going to bring in cash this month, this quarter, keep the thing moving forward, right? So, you may even narrow your planning horizons even shorter to get through that kind of thing. So if you're in a very tight cash situation, then cash has to become your number one priority for a short period of time.
Yeah, and I do think that's why, as you're doing your after action reviews on each quarter, you take a look at each function. So you want to look at your sales function, because if this is a problem with cash flow, then how are you selling? Do we need to take a different strategy for our sales cycle? And closing the deals? How is our marketing? Maybe some of the stuff you're doing, you say, I'm marketing for a longer range success, but what is the marketing? What is the sales? How are you working with your financial management and your product development? All of those things are systems, but they may need to be overhauled at this time.
Yeah, I mean, it is a season of overhaul, and it's okay, right? So, and we talked about the surviving the cash. Whatever you do, right? If you get back to that fundamental thing, you talked about sales process. It may be what you're selling, may need to change, right? We may be in that fundamental of a time where we need to go back and look at what we're selling and figure out whether we can keep selling it.
Well, and look at the restaurants that suddenly had, takeout service when they didn't before. And some are doing actually better than they were before COVID.
Well, I listened to a radio segment recently, and they were talking to some restaurants throughout the country. And, of course, we're getting into cold season. A lot of restaurants shifted by taking it outdoors.
Right.
And there's actually a number of restaurants now that are building either igloos or teepees or some type of outdoor seating that's winter approved for a cold climate, right? And they're coming up with different ways I mean, that is the ultimate creativity. And that's an example of people that are figuring it out how to survive, right? I need to sell food. That's my business. I entertain people. I can't get as many people in the restaurant as I did last winter. What do? Well, some of them are going to buy teepees and stick people outside.
Where is that happening?
One of them's in Boston. The igloos are in Boston.
I was going to say, are any of them in Alaska?
And then no, the igloo was in Boston, and then it's some type of teepee. I can't remember. It has a special word for it, but it's a upscale teepee, and that's somewhere in Colorado. I think it was near a ski resort.
Okay.
And basically, the idea is you reserve your space. The one with a teepee, I think they have a minimum, right? So it's a teepee of a certain size. You have to guarantee them. I think it was $600. So you got to bring, so you bring a decent sized party or whatever. But they basically have said, okay, well, we can do the calculation. If we build teepees outside and, we let people dine in the teepees, then we'll sell more food and it will pay for itself over time, right? That's kind of just dealing with the market reality of where you are. The regulatory environment shifted. You got to come up with a new way to serve your customers.
Around us here, there are some movie theaters that are renting out the movie theater. They'll say, you can't do it till the week of, but here are the films that we have, and you can bring for X amount of dollars, you can bring in 20 people. And, they are trying to survive that way. So, I mean, they're just ways in which you have to plan ahead, I guess, but it is a way to survive for some of these companies.
Yeah, just how do you keep the cash rolling, right? So that's just one aspect of our upcoming book. Our new book is on planning for uncertainty. It is going to be published in the near term. We're looking at publishing it here. We're in October 2020. Should be out this month. It will be a short, quick read, something you can very actionable. So I hope you guys are keeping tuned with me and Dr. Ann. We're both on LinkedIn. Get on our Journey to CEO YouTube channel because we'll be talking about that. We also have our Entrepreneur to CEO Facebook page. We really want to get you in the know and, tune in for more of these videos. Follow us. You'll see these videos pop up, but also you'll have an opportunity to jump in and get the book. So Dr. Ann, any final thoughts?
Well, I just also want to remind people that if they have questions, please pop them in the comments below or on our Facebook page. So we can be relevant in the topics that we're bringing to the public so that we're actually providing the kind of information that is needed out there.
Yeah, no, be brave. If you're thinking about a question, if you have a question, there's probably 10, 50, 100, 1,000 other business owners that have that question. So we do appreciate that bravery. And it's helpful to your fellow business owners. And then on our end, it really helps us understand, what people need more depth on, and we will tweak and adjust. We have our feedback from our clients. We have our market knowledge, the reading, the data, everything, all the research that we base our work off of. But when we hear real life stories from business owners like you of what you need, and either, wherever you put your comments, just put them wherever you can get them to us at. It does help us, and we will then craft to the things you need. So it comes a co-creation and will serve your needs better. So we do welcome that.
Yeah, we try and find the resources that are necessary that we can put in, because this book that we have, Planning for Uncertainty, has actionable steps that can be taken, resources available. So that's what we're trying to bring forward and really be assisting a struggling world out there.
Yeah, and we're gonna have a degree of that continue for a while, and let's just be real. We need to step up our games. It's going to be tough for a lot of us businesses for a while, and we just got to figure out how to get through it. And we're going to give you tools and tricks and tips and ideas and best lessons to do that. That's the whole point, is to make it easier to get through this period. We got to do the work. We got to invest the time and the money to do it. But I'm personally, and I think you too, Dr. Ann, I believe this is inherently survivable. A smart business owner that does the work can figure out the way. You just have to do the work.
Correct.
Yeah. So
Agreed.
May not like the cards you were dealt, but there are answers. Glad you tuned in today. Looking forward to reading your comments. Drop them on our Journey to CEO YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, share with your fellow business owners, and get ready for our Planning for Uncertainty book, which is going to be coming to you very soon. Help you get through these types of things. Thanks for joining us today, folks.
Thanks.